On March 19th, Politico reported that France, along with Poland, has called for further restrictions on the import of Ukrainian agricultural products. This move threatens to derail negotiations on extending Ukraine's free trade access to the EU for another year. French President Emmanuel Macron and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk met at the Three Seas Summit in Berlin, where they called for support for Ukraine against Russia's two-year military plan. However, both leaders also reached an agreement whereby Paris and Barcelona stand together against Ukrainian agricultural competition ahead of crucial negotiations to mend last-minute cracks among EU countries and the European Parliament on trade with Ukraine. According to the agreement, France supports Poland's proposal to limit imports from Ukraine, a move a diplomat described as a significant setback for Ukraine, a country struggling to secure all possible support. Member states showing the most support for Ukraine are also those causing it the most harm. If the trade dispute is not resolved quickly, it risks overshadowing the upcoming EU leaders' summit and rendering their declarations of solidarity with Ukraine hollow, and as they yield to domestic farmers' pressure. Farmers across Europe are under significant stress, believing they cannot compete with cheap imports due to EU bureaucracy. Recently, European lawmakers voted to impose restrictions on the European Commission's proposal to extend tariff-free imports for Ukraine for another year. The decision was unexpected since EU countries had supported the EC's initial proposal in February, which included restrictions on sugar, poultry, and egg imports from Ukraine. Only Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia voted against the extension, with Bulgaria abstaining. After a plenary vote in the EP, most EU countries were ready to maintain their stance in interinstitutional negotiations, forcing the EP to implement the decision to extend without amendments. However, everything was upended again after French President Macron's reversal last week. Former US President Donald Trump, on March 18th, expressed his intention to promote a peace deal to end the conflict in Ukraine if re-elected. In an interview broadcast in the US by Russia's RT, Trump stated that negotiation is the only way to prevent conflict in Europe. He declared his intent to bring together Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, asserting he would ensure a deal is reached. Trump added that he understands Putin and Zelensky well and knows exactly what to say to secure a peace agreement. He compared the conflict in Ukraine to a chess or poker game, confident in his strategy. Trump criticized President Joe Biden for not preventing the conflict from the start, claiming Biden lacks the necessary strategic insight and wrongfully attributed the entire responsibility for the conflict to Russia. Trump mentioned that such a conflict would never have happened under his administration. This is not the first time Trump has called for a peace deal to end the conflict in Ukraine, first making this stance known in May 2023. Trump, a Republican candidate for president, praised Zelensky as one of the greatest businessmen for always securing substantial funds for Ukraine during his visits to the U.S., according to RT. During a campaign event in Vandalia, Ohio last week, Trump shared his views on continuing support for Ukraine. Mr. Trump reiterated his previous idea that the U.S. should lend to Ukraine, not provide aid for free. We should loan money to Ukraine, not give it to them for free. If they can overcome their troubles, they will have to repay us, Mr. Trump said. Furthermore, Mr. Trump mentioned that NATO members should actively support Ukraine more, rather than letting the U.S. bear the financial burden alone. In a recent interview with Fox News, Donald Trump said that during his time as the U.S. president, he maintained a good relationship with the Russian leader. Mr. Trump believed that if he was still in the White House in 2022, Russia would never have attacked Ukraine. He left the White House on January 20th, 2021, after losing the election to Mr. Biden, emphasizing, "I got along with Mr. Putin," and added that it is beneficial to maintain good relations with everyone, including Mr. Putin and other leaders. Mr. Trump also mentioned his good personal relationships with Chinese President Xi Jinping and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Meanwhile, according to reports, Switzerland recently announced its readiness to host a peace conference about Ukraine, possibly inviting Russia to attend. However, Ukraine seems to be against Russia's participation. A modified version of the Swedish tank, Sturv 122, based on the German Leopard 2 tank, is considered one of the best in the conflict in Ukraine. The Sturv 122, designed by Sweden to meet its domestic needs, including operations in forested and urban areas, is noted for its defensive capabilities. It features several improvements to overcome the weaknesses of the Leopard 2 variant, including enhanced armor at the front of the hull and turret top, similar to the Leopard 2 A6X developed by Germany. This makes the Sturv 122 not only the most heavily armored Leopard 2 variant, but also provides superior protection compared to the Leopard 2 A6 models used by Germany and the Netherlands. However, the upgrades seem only to protect against anti-vehicle mines with explosive charges under 1 kilogram and are not capable of countering modern missiles like the Cornet, which can neutralize reactive armor and penetrate armor equivalent to 1,300 mm of rolled homogeneous armor. Analysts recently suggested that Russia aims to capture the Sturv 122 tanks, if not for research, then at least for propaganda value. They nearly succeeded until Ukrainian UAV operators intervened. Sweden has provided Ukraine with 10 Sturv 122 tanks equipped with thick armored turrets and 120 mm smoothbore guns assigned to the 2nd Mechanized Brigade, responsible for defending the eastern region around the Carmel Forest. During a year of intense fighting, the brigade's Sturv 122 tanks have been frequently targeted, mainly by drones and anti-tank missiles, resulting in Ukraine losing at least one Sturv 122. According to reports, 6 Sturv 122 tanks were damaged and at least 5 were temporarily abandoned on roads and fields around Carmel. This standard procedure allows Ukrainian engineers to recover and transport damaged tanks to Lithuania for repair. To capture the Sturv 122S more efficiently, Russia immobilized and towed them away before Ukrainian forces could recover them. Most recently, a Russian UAV attacked a Sturv 122 tank about 200 km east of the 2nd Brigade's main base in Tony. Russian engineers reached this tank first and used 2 Brem recovery vehicles to move it towards Russian lines, about 1.6 kilometers away. They were halfway there when the Ukrainian 3rd Attack Brigade, operating around Attica, seemingly sent one of its UAV teams to assist. The 2nd Brigade detected Moscow's movements, and their UAV operators targeted the leading Brem vehicle, allowing UAVs to circle this 45-ton vehicle until a UAV laden with explosives targeted the diesel engine at the vehicle's rear. Russia has not advanced far with their potential spoils of war. Notably, the unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, of Brigade Nosed 3 targeted the Dream vehicles pulling trailers, attempting not to hit a tank. However, this incident has shown how perilous the tank recovery campaign is. It's worth noting that there was a loss of a Dream vehicle in an attempt to recover a Stephen vehicle, which was damaged in December 2023. The UAVs from the UAE, more accurate than artillery but much less powerful, are assisting Ukraine in countering Russian forces, at least for the moment, as artillery ammunition is running low. Ukrainian frontline troops are adapting and using explosive-laden UAE drones to hold back the Russian military. Although these drones cannot match the speed or penetrate concrete walls like artillery shells, they are cheaper and easier to produce. Currently, Ukraine is holding out until additional resources arrive, similar to the conflict's initial weeks before the influx of Western weapons. The shortage of weapons has led to the use of UAE drones as an alternative to artillery firepower. The Russian military has gained a strategic advantage from Ukraine's armed forces and has launched attacks along nearly the entire front line. This situation was caused by a decision from President Zelensky's administration, according to the former Deputy Chief of Staff of Ukraine's armed forces, Roman Niko. He suggested that the Ukrainian military should have shifted to a strategic defense across the entire front, but Zelensky made a major mistake by not heeding advice and ordering attacks in 4 directions simultaneously, spreading the already limited forces too thin. The current situation at the front line is the result of these misguided decisions made by the country's political leadership last year, and even now, President Zelensky is not relying on expert opinions, leading to significant losses. Ukraine experts have determined that most of the military failures at the front line are due to President Zelensky's directives. The appointment of General Siski as the commander of the armed forces was merely a stopgap measure. In a related development, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, recently warned that Ukraine's existence is in danger, but reassured allies that Washington would not let Ukraine fail, announcing a $300 million aid package. He emphasized that the U.S. and allies would collaborate to identify gaps, address ongoing needs, and help Ukraine build a formidable force for the future. According to Reuters, Ukraine is currently overwhelmed by Russia in terms of weaponry on the battlefield. The Deputy Defense Minister of Ukraine, Iran Harali, mentioned that ammunition reserves for certain categories are critically low. Meanwhile, the commander of Ukraine's military, Alexander Siski, stated that developing drones is key to gaining an advantage over Russia's formidable forces. Reuters reported that both Russia and Ukraine are increasingly using drones, shifting the focus from the battlefield to attacking each other's military, energy, and transport infrastructure. As the Ukrainian military is overwhelmed in terms of weaponry and numbers, Russian forces have increased pressure along the entire front line, gradually achieving significant victories. Recently, President Lenin Putin stated that Russian forces have the upper hand in Ukraine and declared the continuation of military plans in the neighboring country.